Coming to you live from the Soup Studios in beautiful downtown Metrodelphia, it's that Sultan of Sleuthing, that Houdini of Whodunits, Jack McCoy, Private Eye. This episode, make new friends and keep the gold.
The story I'm about to tell you does not put me in a particularly good light. This is acceptable to me. We've done quite a few of these episodes, and I have never once claimed that I am a paragon of respectability or even that nice of a guy. If I come across as something of a jerk in this story, I find that quite acceptable, thank you very much. However, there is a detail I've never before felt you needed to be privy to, which I am now going to elucidate. You are, of course, familiar with my sometimes ally, sometimes foil, and always the cause of my headaches, Sergeant O'Hanlon. Him of "You don't say" fame. You are not familiar with the woman of incredible kindness and questionable taste, who he has the unbelievable luck to call his wife. Shannon O'Hanlon has the patience of Job, the selflessness of Mother Teresa, and an alcohol tolerance which beats out most fraternity brothers who are twice her size. And one final crucial detail. Shannon is one of my landlady's best friends. They met doing, quilting, sewing bee, macrame. It was something like that. Anyway, as Ethel requires an incredible amount of tolerance, alcoholic or otherwise, to deal with, one could argue that Ethel and Shannon are made for each other. I tell you this, dear listener, because if you don't understand that Ethel will spend the remainder of this episode selfishly looking out for her best friend, her actions might seem generous, kind, and benevolent. In the interest of journalistic integrity, I cannot allow that disinformation to run rampant.
You have to let her in.
I disagree.
Jack?
Ethel, I don't have a great many joys in my life. Why would I choose to open my door for someone who will only bring me misery?
Because you're a private detective.
Besides that.
Because you need the money.
Do you really think she's going to pay me?
Well, maybe I would pay you. What?
You're not serious.
I'll knock $200 off this month's rent if you help him.
But that's the thing. I'm not going to help him. That's the thing you learn in my job. Odds are good that the case goes unsolved. The missing thing stays lost. The murderer is never unmasked. It happens. And when the client's a perfect stranger, that's fine. I can pester them about paying for my time even if they don't like the result. That's just part of the job. But when it's somebody I know, things are different. If I can't crack the case, somebody I know is going to suffer. And it is very much my fault, even though logically I'm no more to blame than any other case.
I will make this simple for you, Jack. I'm not going anywhere. So if you don't want to let in this person who we both know you're eventually going to help, then you and I can keep on chatting.
Oh, boy. Fine. Let her in.
Jack, you got to help us.
Hello, Penelope.
Daddy always said we could count on you when things got bad.
I'm sure he did.
He looks up to you so much.
Well, he is 3 inches shorter than me.
And I just know, with all the scrapes you two have been through, that you'll do everything in your power to get him out of this mess.
This is emotional blackmail.
Is it working?
Sit down.
So do you think you can help Dad?
No. But I can try. So according to the papers, you and your mother were in the other room. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay then. Set the scene for me. Okay, so we're doing a flashback. Good, that'll save time.
Mr. and Mrs. O'Hanlon?
Oh, you can call me Shannon, David. We're practically family.
And you can call me Sergeant Boyle.
Sure, right. Anyway, I'm here to ask for permission to marry your daughter.
Oh, David.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
We couldn't have picked a better word, Shannon.
Excuse me?
Dad?
Now, Sergeant O'Hanlon, is that any way to treat our guest?
For the record, your mother calls him Sergeant when he's at home?
Does he even have a first name?
This is exactly what happened, Jack.
Okay, go ahead.
You apologize this very minute.
I don't think so, Shannon. Before I even think of giving me blessings, I did have a few questions. Like, Penelope, did he ever mention the 6 months he spent in prison for attempted burglary?
Of course I told her. That was a long time ago, and I don't live that life any longer.
Dad, that's all in the past now.
Well, if you say so. I would still like to have a word with the boyo in private.
I don't know if that's such a good idea.
Go on with you.
Dad, you be nice.
I'll be whatever the mood strikes me as, young woman. Now get on with you.
Mom, you've got to put a stop to this.
Honey, I know your father is a bit overprotective.
Name 3 of my boyfriends he hasn't arrested.
All right. He's very overprotective. But he only does it because he cares. And also, possibly, because you date so many felons.
They weren't felons before he arrested them. David!
Oh, dearie me.
David! And there he was, lying next to the fireplace. The gold cauldron was on the floor, and it was all covered in blood.
Why do you folks have a gold cauldron?
Oh, it's an old family tradition. Each generation we melt down our wedding rings and add them to the rim of the cauldron, making it just a little deeper every generation. Mom always said it would be my dowry one day.
People still do dowries?
Well, when it's a multi-generational tradition, they do.
All right. And your father says he didn't kill your boyfriend?
Right.
And do you believe him?
Of course she does.
Wasn't asking you, Ethel. In point of fact, I'm almost never asking you. Penelope. Okay, that answers that question.
I'm 90% sure he didn't. 85. All right, 70.
Stop. The last thing I want is for you to mark this down any lower.
Will you help him?
The full month's rent.
Whether I succeed or fail?
Yes.
All right, I'll go stick my face into some beehives and hope for the best. All previous evidence to the contrary, I hate getting involved with a murder case. I'm also not a fan of working a case where a cop is the main suspect. Exactly nobody in any official capacity wants me within 10 miles of a case like that. I don't actually believe a private eye can be too cynical. But when I say things like, nobody cares about guilt or innocence, they just don't want the police force to look bad, well, even I can see why I'm not invited to the Christmas parties. Now, there was one party involved who was contractually obligated to be in O'Hanlon's corner, and that was his shyster. The smart money would have been to hire a real shark to give oneself the best possible chance of avoiding a seat with AC current running through it at 5 million volts. Of course, given how many kids O'Hanlon was putting through college at the moment, he didn't have any money. And as for smarts, well, we are talking about O'Hanlon.
Counselor, you know your client has the right to remain silent, right?
I do.
How many times have you read a suspect their Miranda rights?
Don't answer that.
He can answer that question.
Are you sure? Because it seems like a trick.
O'Hanlon, are you sure you want to stick with this lawyer?
Cecily is part of the family.
I'm his sister in ex-law.
Run that by me again?
I married his brother, but then we got divorced.
So his ex-sister-in-law.
Yeah, except we kind of made up after the divorce, and I moved back in with him for a few years. Before you knew it, we had a common law marriage on our hands.
So then you're just his sister-in-law again.
Afraid not. They changed the common law marriage laws a few years ago, and Cecily and Robert aren't considered married anymore.
So, I'm his sister in ex-law.
All right. I deserve that for asking. And at the risk of getting another stupid answer, I have a more relevant question. have you practiced criminal law before? Like, ever?
I am pleading the fifth.
You don't need to plead the fifth. You're not on trial for...
Before you bother finishing that sentence, if you think about this for half a second, you probably have your answer already.
McCoy! Not that I'm surprised, but what are you doing here?
I'm offering my services to Cecily to prove her client's innocence. All I want is 25% of a fee.
I am doing this pro bono.
Then I want 50%.
McCoy!
What's it matter to you if I'm bad at math, Detective Hogan?
We are in the middle of interviewing a suspect.
You haven't even started yet. First, they had to track down somebody from a different precinct who isn't friends with, or more likely related to, O'Hanlon. Most of those people were suspiciously busy until your shift began an hour and a half ago. Owing to that time you arrested Captain Porter's youngest son for graffiti a few years back, you were not given the chance to be suspiciously busy. So, then you had to schlep on down here, which took you the better part of an hour. Add in some time to review the crime scene report so you had some idea of what you were talking about. And then a few more minutes to understand the difference between a sister-in-X law and an ex-sister-in-law. And we're basically at right now.
McCoy,
Yes, Detective Sergeant.
there's a chair over there. You may sit in it. I know that keeping your trap shut is outside your capacity, so instead I will say this. You may stay in that chair right up until the moment when you start making my life more difficult. At which point, I will not only evict you from the room, but I will drag your backside to the police academy and give free demonstrations to the cadets about what constitutes excessive use of force. Are we on the same page, McCoy?
Not sure if it's the same book, but definitely the same page.
Sit down. Shut up. I'm not picky about the order of operations. Now, you.
Me?
Yes, the lead suspect. Tell me what happened.
Can I plead the fifth?
Yes.
Do not plead the fifth.
He has the right to plead the fifth.
He also has the right to grow a handlebar mustache. That doesn't stop it from being a stupid idea. O'Hanlon, did you kill your daughter's boyfriend?
No, of course not.
Then tell us what happened.
Oh, all right. Shannon and Penelope had just gone into the other room when...
Are we doing a flashback?
Hey, you got it easy. This is my second one today.
Look, Sergeant, I know I've made mistakes in the past, but you gotta give me a break. That was a long time ago.
Boy, oh, you just got out of prison 4 years ago. Now, I believe in second chances as much as the next fella, but you're pushing chance number 17 at this point.
You know what? I've spent my whole life being judged by high and mighty jerks like you. Well, you know what you could do with that sanctimonious attitude? You can... and then... until you're... to the what? While I take and... with a melon with razor blades on it.
How did you just censor a flashback?
There's a guy on 53rd Street who can set that up.
All right, David. I think I've heard enough. Now, there's no need to bring my mother into this. Now, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn around and pour myself a nice, healthy glass of whiskey. And when I'm done drinking it, if you're still thick-headed enough to be still standing here, well, on your own head be it. And when I turned around, he was lying on the floor with blood all over his head.
And the gold cauldron?
Quit stealing my lines, McCoy. And besides, you're only asking half of the right question.
I don't understand.
The real question is, where was the cauldron and which one was it?
What?
What?
There were 2 cauldrons. One of them was solid gold and covered in the victim's blood.
We didn't see another one.
You mean the one which was underneath the victim? I'm not surprised.
Why were there 2?
That's sort of the question I'm asking. But if it helps, there's one more detail you might find helpful. One of them was made out of solid gold. The other pot had a thin veneer of gold over some lead.
That sounds suspicious.
Gee, thank you for your insight.
I got it.
Got what?
I know what happened. While O'Hanlon's back was turned, he switched the gold one for the fake, but he couldn't put it on the shelf right, and it came down and landed on his head.
That's a great theory.
Oh, good.
Except,
Oh boy.
McCoy, I'm going to guess you know where this is going?
The solid gold one is the one that bonked him on the head, isn't it?
You don't say.
I do say, as a matter of fact.
And he's right. But before anyone comes out with a guess like, oh, it fell before he got a chance to switch them, you should know his fingerprints were all over both pots.
So, what does that mean?
It means that exactly nothing makes sense here, unless, of course, somebody got cute and started tampering with the evidence. Now, O'Hanlon, given that you're allegedly a cop, who do you suppose might have been smart enough to do that while also dumb enough to screw it up this badly?
That's thin, Detective.
Maybe, but I have enough to keep digging and fatten it up. I'm holding your client on suspicion of murder, Miss Cecily, and if I find one more scrap of evidence, that's going to become an arrest.
A fair-minded person wouldn't be too hard on Detective Sergeant Hogan. He hadn't wanted the case in the first place, and if he didn't do a thorough job, odds were good that the brass and the press were going to eat him alive. In addition, the whole thing stunk like a fish in the office kitchen on Monday morning. That having been said, I have never been accused of being fair-minded. I didn't really care that Detective Sergeant Hogan was doing just about exactly what I would do with a case this screwy. All I cared about was the fact that Detective Sergeant Hogan was currently being a pain in my hiney. So, to keep O'Hanlon out of the hoosegow, I had to come up with an explanation for a completely bonkers set of facts that made no sense on the face of it. This required what was ultimately my least favorite part of the job. What's worse, I had to do it with an audience.
Find anything yet?
Yes, I found that acetaminophen I wanted to take to get rid of the pain in my neck. What do you know? It didn't work.
What are you looking at?
Financial records.
Why?
Because following the money works as often as it doesn't.
So? Does it work?
Sometimes.
Is it working now?
Ethel, clam up.
That means no.
It means not yet. So your late fiancé was making more than his fair share of withdrawals.
Should you have access to his bank records?
You ask a lot of questions.
That also means no.
Stick to the matter at hand. Withdrawals?
Well, he did just buy an engagement ring.
May I see said ring?
Of course. I don't wear it because, well, but it's in this box. What are you doing?
Getting a magnifying glass. Needless to say, his money troubles were not related to buying a 1/16 of a carat ring.
Well, it was more about the sentiment.
Sweetie, he got that from a vending machine outside a supermarket.
At least he probably had to spend 2 quarters for it.
That's a good thing, right?
No.
She's talking to me, and she's not wrong. But she's not exactly right either. So for Ethel, that's above average.
Wise guy.
What are you even talking about?
Let's level set for a moment, Penelope. My job is to prove your father didn't do it, correct?
Yes.
Good. Now, your late fiancé was an ex-con with money troubles. From your point of view, that's a shame. But for me, it's a gold mine. It points the finger of blame away from your father. Except in this case, it doesn't.
What do you mean?
If he was replacing the real cauldron with a fake one, the fact that he was short on funds makes perfect sense. It points to motive. But when it comes to stealing the fake and leaving the real one behind, it doesn't make a lick of sense.
Well, maybe that wasn't what he was doing.
Then why were his fingerprints on both of them? Nothing else makes sense. Had he ever been to the house before?
Once or twice, but that still wouldn't explain it. Mom knew company was coming, and that meant she had polished that cauldron till it shined. Even if he had fingerprints from an earlier visit, they'd have been cleaned off.
So maybe he switched it a while ago and pawned it for the money, but then he felt guilty and he got it out of Hawk.
Do you really think so?
Don't get your hopes up. First off, got it out of Hawk with what? My bank account looks healthier than this one.
I sincerely doubt that.
Even if he got a lucky scratch-off ticket and could afford to buy the original back, you really think Shannon O'Hanlon could polish her beloved family heirloom and not notice something was wrong? No, something's still missing.
I don't know how he was planning to sneak the cauldron out, real or fake.
There's not so much gold in a wedding ring. Even with several generations, it's not that big. But you have a point. Did he have a bag or something?
Oh, yeah. A little messenger bag he kept some papers in. Ever since he started dropping hints that he was going to propose, Mom would dig around in it to see if she could catch a peek of the ring. What?
This is something you couldn't have told me an hour ago? I headed straight to the Church of St. James the Greater. And no, I was not saying a prayer of thanks for the epiphany I just had. That's epiphany with a small e because it wasn't January, by the by. I waited in no small discomfort as Shannon O'Hanlon finished saying her rosary, and then I went to make a few other people feel some discomfort. Detective Sergeant Hogan, you are a jerk.
Private Investigator McCoy, you're a butthead. Now that we've got all that straight, have a nice day.
All you had to say was there was another set of fingerprints on the cauldrons. That's all it would have taken.
There were?
There were.
Yeah, don't say...
We're not doing that again.
Am I supposed to feel bad about not sharing every piece of evidence with the lead suspect?
Yes.
I think so.
It was kind of rude.
That was rhetorical. Also, shut up.
You couldn't track that second set of prints because whoever made them has no criminal record.
And because the tech boys were dumber than a box of accordions.
I don't suppose a lot of people do offer them tea.
Shannon?
They're my prints, officer.
Shannon!
I saw the cauldron in his bag, and I knew there could be only one reason for it. I didn't want to call him out in front of Penelope, so I switched them right then and there, so that when he took it, he'd take the wrong one.
So he was after me pot of gold.
Can you not call it that?
You'll swear to this in a written statement?
If it's necessary.
If you would like me not to arrest your husband, yes, it's necessary. What am I missing?
When I made the switch, I noticed the shelf. It was
rickety. The crime scene boys did mention that.
I didn't think anything about it. It was just a little unstable, but then afterwards...
All right, enough. Hogan, is there any possible crime you could arrest this woman for?
I could make one up if I felt like having the DA laugh in my face. If not doing home repairs is a crime, my wife would have had me in the slammer years ago.
All that said, it would have made everyone's life easier if you had mentioned this beforehand instead of wallowing in guilt.
Go easy on her, boyo. It's not every day that this sort of thing happens. She's not a hardened crime fighter like you and me.
Sergeant O'Hanlon, you're a fool. But I love you anyway.
And that's what marriage is all about.
And so, once again, justice prevails and our hero gets to keep all of his supporting cast intact. Will we keep this trend going in the future? Find out next time on another thrilling adventure of Jack McCoy, Private Eye.
You've been listening to Jack McCoy, Private Eye. Make new friends and keep the gold. Produced by Seat of Our Pants players, written and directed by Dan Wenzel. Jack was Rick Tennant. The announcer and Detective Hogan were Andrew Dell. Ethel was Jill Wenzel. Penelope was Brianna Kuby. Shannon was Andy Gastonguay. Sergeant O'Hanlon was Dan Wenzel. David was Adam Gastonguay. And Cecily was Liz Music. Fast Talking by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed by Creative Commons under Attribution 3.0. Other music and sound effects by www.freesfx.co.uk. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Hi, everyone. This is Dan Wenzel from Seat of Our Pants Players. We would like to take this moment to give an extra wonderful special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. And a super wonder, mega, awesome, holy cow, you're great, and we like you. And I'm going to stop now. The person who is supporting us at the Founder of the Feast level, you really make our day the most wonderful thing in the world. Thank you so much, everyone. Please consider supporting us on patreon.com/seatofourpantsplayers. All one word.